Hello everybody, Brad Johnson here, and in this video we're going to be doing the Adronis Top 5 for January of 2018. What is the current situation as it relates to the Cabal? We are here at this time, and we bid you greetings, and thank you very much for the opportunity of this interaction today. I am Adronis of Sirius, sending love, appreciation, and gratitude to all who are tuning into this broadcast through your internet collective consciousness. As it relates to your first question, what is the current situation pertaining to the Cabal, as you call it? Many of them have basically, officially surrendered, relating to their aspect of empire that they have attempted to enforce upon the planet. Now, many of them have basically created shelters, or we would say refuge, taken refuge, within the continent that you would know as Antarctica. Some have also had connections within that of the area of Argentina and areas of South Africa as well too. Primarily, we would say most of those primary powers have basically created a state of truce. They have surrendered altogether. Now, primarily, there are plans in being able to initiate a new financial system that is currently in the works. So again, this has been held back for quite some time. And primarily, many of those of the cabal, that you would call it, those that have been the opposers to these forms of financial shifts, have now decided to lay down their arms, and many of them are beginning to cooperate, and they are in a state of negotiation. Simply because behind the scenes there have been a great deal of what you would know as mass arrests, and there have been, shall we say, certain laws that are being passed that will no longer tolerate the aspect of, shall we say, the money squandering that has been taken place through many of these particular forms of groups that would represent your cabal. This is not to say that the entirety of the, shall we say, enforcement pertaining to the opposers is completely finished, but we would basically say that the, shall we say, head of the snake has now been cut off, and that this is primarily the end as it relates to the overall rule representing that of the cabal. So they have basically surrendered. They have primarily decided to cooperate and negotiate with other members of your Earth Alliance, to where there will be opportunities of, again, of a new financial system that will start to show itself further throughout your 2018 and 2019 years, perhaps even into early 2020, just all depending in that sense of continual cooperation. Right now, it does feel that the alternative currency would move more towards your cryptocurrencies. And that is primarily what is going to be on the rise. And again, this is why there are going to be more spikes. And again, there will still be some ups and downs as it relates to the cryptocurrency still attempting to get upon your market. But that is primarily going to be one of the major alternative currencies. But there will also be other particular forms of financial currencies taking place that will, shall we say, improve and adopt the idea of that of what you would know as localized banking, and being able to completely remove the aspect of decentralized banking altogether. Now, as we stated, not all are on board with this aspect of primary surrender. There are still those in that sense that are acting somewhat in the riffraff or the rogue degrees, and will still attempt to create some certain levels of chaos. But again, it is a continuing conflict that is attempting to be remedied. But again, this is happening behind the scenes. Many particular forms of enforcers have already been arrested. Much of their own property and their own aspects of money have been seized. And basically there are frozen accounts. And so as this continues to happen, more and more of the remainder pertaining to the cabal, as you term it, will basically be under the state of surrender, or again, holding certain levels of tribunals, and again, mass arrests will continue to ensue. So it is still a continuing process, but we would say before the end of 2024, that would primarily relate to the complete end, or in that sense, any particular negating of power as it relates to that of the Cabal themselves. So again, this is all part of the span of change. As we have stated before, that the aspect of your Cabal will primarily lose all of its power, or practically almost all of its power, by around the times of 2024. And those that remain will simply be small contingents as it relates to that, but again, will not represent the major threat that has been happening within your past throughout many of these decades and many of these centuries. We think. Question number 2. What about the solar activity currently? Is there a significant percentage of a solar storm happening this year? We thank you once again for your question. As it relates to solar activity, there will be certain increases as it pertains to solar activity as it moves between the spring and fall months of your upcoming 2018, but nothing that you would refer to being catastrophic in that way. There will certainly be, in that sense, a great deal of increase pertaining to sunspots and coronal mass activity, but again, it will not relate to what many of you would refer to as the solar flash or the event. As we have stated, it is all about the sequence of these particular types of solar activities that will take place, and again, like looking at an orchestra, that there will be highs and lows in that particular way, and then there will certainly be a grand finale. But again, this will be happening primarily again within the next few years as it relates to quote-unquote the event or the solar flash. Everything has the opportunity to change, but your sun is still building up its energy, still building up its momentum to basically gradually, at specific times, to therefore disperse certain levels of coronal mass energy upon the planet. And again, it is also being buffered. And so basically the prisms that we have talked about that exist within your star system are still continuing to buffer the energy as it comes through. It is a necessity so that, again, if there was a coronal mass ejection that was left unfiltered, it would basically cause a great deal of harm upon your planet. Not only would it relate to the idea of technological blackouts or electrical blackouts, but it would also relate in that sense to a great increase of emotional, psychological disruption. And again, this can lead to severe shock situations. So that is not looking to happen here. So again, everything pertaining to the coronal mass ejection situation is primarily under the state of a buffering. It is being monitored, it is being managed, it is being administrated, and there are negotiations taking place between those that exist within superfederations that are working together in negotiation with the heart of the sun, with the soul of the sun, with the spirit of the sun. That is primarily how this works. Every living thing has consciousness to which you can communicate, to which you can negotiate with. And there is a negotiation happening right now as it would relate to what you would refer to as the solar flash or as the event. So is this definitely going to happen? Is there in fact going to be a definite solar event? Yes. But again, the timing of it at this particular time still represents an unknown. There is a momentum that it will be within the next few years, but this can always change. So primarily, right now, there are a buffering, an administrating, and a management pertaining to the aspect of coronal mass ejections and solar flares happening throughout the star system and impacting your planet. We thank you. Question number 3. UFO sightings have become extremely popular as of late. Are we being geared up for ET disclosure? We thank you very much for your question. We will state that as it relates to the quote-unquote UFO sightings that are taking place, this is all part of an agenda that has been agreed to behind the scenes, and it is primarily playing itself out on a primary agreed level through, shall we say, many different forms of top-level personnel in cooperation together with your media, etc. Now, you will notice that other particular countries will also follow suit, and they will also reveal certain forms of documentation through their own airwaves as well, too. And so this is all part of a cooperative effort for a partial disclosure, not a full disclosure. And so basically that is what has primarily been agreed upon at this time. The degree in that sense is that many of you do wish for a full disclosure, but that really is not going to be possible. Everything that is taking place right now pertaining to the aspect of your UFO sightings and country cooperation is all part of a partial disclosure. Now, we understand that many of you would love to have a full disclosure take place, but unfortunately this is not really possible at your time. The reason being is because full disclosure primarily exists to those within the grassroots. They are already aware of many different forms of phenomena that have been happening for a great deal of time. So primarily full disclosure would certainly exist within your grassroots circles. But as it would relate to the mainstream, you have to understand that it's no more different than attempting to feed an infant a giant 3-course meal. Simply could not happen. And so when it comes to the mainstream, you will basically have the infant-like versions as it pertains to disclosure, simply not to cause any particular form of disruption or rocking the boat so much. Now again, there will certainly come a time to where disclosure will heighten itself. But if you are looking for the aspect of disclosure within the mainstream, it'll be very elementary aspects pertaining to disclosure. Basically, all that's happening right now is more of a teasing in that sense, and not even a full admittance as it relates to other spacecraft. And stating that, oh, we're just saying that these are unidentified flying objects, we're not stating that they are actually from another world, etc. And all there really is just an inquiry, a questionability. Could this be something from another world? Could this be something in regards to aliens or extraterrestrials, etc.? That's where you stand right now as it pertains to the mainstream. When you're looking into the grassroots, you're seeing a lot more. You're seeing a lot more information relating to ancient civilizations and regards to star beings that have associated together with them. You are looking into super federations, looking into your secret space programs, looking into beings that reside within your inner earth, etc. That is where all the deep information is, and it will still always be that depth of information that will remain within the grassroots. We understand many of you would love to see a lot of that information on a deep level within the grassroots circles to come into the mainstream. This is unlikely. They're not compatible. Simply because the grassroots is much more deep, much more rich with information that even many of the grassroots viewers still may not even be able to get their heads around. And saying that feels a little too extreme even to me. Imagine how the mainstream media would react to that, or your mainstream audience would react to that. They would basically feel that the mainstream media, quote unquote, would ruin its reputation, when in fact much of their reputation is questionable in the first place. So primarily, when you're looking into the mainstream, it is organized, it has primarily been put together to function as a partial disclosure platform. That's how it works right now. Basically, if there has been any particular attempt in creating a full disclosure, it would be stopped as it relates to the mainstream. So because you cannot feed a baby that 3-course meal. You have to feed it small little spoonfuls every now and then. So that's primarily what's happening right now. Again, there will be more discussions as it relates to quote-unquote UFOs, other spacecraft. There may also reach discussions about encounters as well too. Eyewitness accounts with other particular beings from beyond your world. There again will be more communication as it relates to exoplanets. There may also be other particular forms of information relating to flora and fauna, vegetation found on some of these exoplanet worlds. There may also be discoveries upon your planet Mars that may also be divulged. But again, this is primarily how the partial disclosure is working. We would basically say to those that are involved within the grassroots circles, you're not really going to find much interest as it pertains to the mainstream partial disclosure. It will feel very elementary to you. So basically, we would say, if you want to look into the depth, you're looking into your grassroots. But if you want to look even deeper, you're looking into yourself. So yes, there certainly has been an escalation as it pertains to partial disclosure, and it will start to escalate a little bit more here and there. But again, it is a long, drawn-out process. There are also going to be other particular forms of revealings relating to intergovernment affairs, black operation projects that have been shall we say, funded and proven throughout much of your investigators. Again, much of the elementary aspects pertaining to this type of disclosure that is taking place. And it's only a part of the partial disclosure agenda that is being utilized in many of your mainstream circles. Again, when you're looking into alternative media, that is where you will find the richness as it pertains to a greater depth pertaining to extraterrestrial disclosure, and that is simply how it is being operated at this time. We thank you. Question number 4. What is the internal structure of an intergalactic superfederation that's here in our star system? We thank you very much once again for your question. Now, basically, the internal structure of a superfederation is all part of a community. It would be no more different than if you were to have an ecological community or a community cooperative neighborhood to where everybody is doing their part. It is basically, in that way, a certain form of open source communication. There are those that, yes, will come forward in this star system, and they basically are, shall we say, becoming interviewed. And as they are becoming interviewed, we will discover primarily, shall we say, what they have to offer relating to this superfederation movement that is taking place upon your star system. Now, there are certainly jurisdictions that are taking place within the superfederations. Again, some may need to be made aware of much of the ways of conduct pertaining to your star system. That you do not just fly into orbit, go and land on a planet and saying, "Hi humans, we're from another planet, how's it going?" No. There are certain protocols that are being followed. But when you're looking at a super federation, you're looking at several different organizations, several different interstellar agencies that have formed together an umbrella. And many of them are basically contained under this umbrella, working together in certain components of arrangements. Now, basically, our involvement relating to a super federation is that we do talk with various other organizations in that way that are, again, in alignment to what we are doing here as well, too, communicating through this particular means. So there are also other coordinated beings. So primarily the Shikani, the race that you would know as Bashar's people, we speak to quite often. There are also certain hybrid races that we speak to, such as the Yahyel, such as the Pla-Yel as well too. We also speak to other particular forms of hybrid human races that are not currently identified with labels. We also speak to them because they too are working together in, shall we say, a behind-the-scenes approach in working together with much of the ground crew here on this planet. So those are primarily what you would know as the contact specialists or the mentors that are coming through via channeling and other telepathic states of being. Then there are those in that sense who are simply monitoring the star system as it pertains to celestial phenomena to ensure that there is no particular, shall we say, approaching object that may cause any particular disruption within the gravitational fields of your star system. So those are in that sense being carefully managed. Now, primarily, there has been a great deal of quote-unquote footage that has been taken from many of your satellites, media, shall we say, photos, video, etc., as it would relate to other particular spacecraft managing certain forms of celestial phenomenon. However, this has been kept much within your vaults. So basically, there has been certain activity taking place around the area of Neptune. And there has been certain impacts that have been hitting the surface of Neptune in that sense that have been censored from your particular media. However, it is not primarily visible to where you are on Earth as it relates to your range. But there have been certain forms of phenomena taking place around the area of Neptune and the small asteroid belt that exists primarily around there. There again have been certain forms of patrols that will patrol much of the inner and outer territories. In fact, much of your own secret space program and their own fleets are well known for this, patrolling the inner sector of your star system and the outer area of your star system through certain divisions in that way. So basically, much of your secret space program fleets are also working together in compatibility with other super federations. Many of the super federations do have bases. They have monitoring stations, primarily much along the areas of your own moons. So the moons of Jupiter, the moons of Saturn, the moons of Neptune, of Uranus, etc. There are bases, monitoring stations, laboratories, facilities that are there upon many of those moons. It is also important to know that much of the appearance to the outer planets that you would know as Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, just to name a few, primarily represent veils. And we will say that again. The appearance of the gas giants that are within your star system are that of veils. In other words, that's not really what the planets look like. So we will leave that to you to discover more about that yourself. But primarily, as it relates to the super federations, there are those that patrol, there are those that monitor, there are those that observe, there are those that facilitate energies, there are those that look after your planet, there are those that are negotiating with your star, there are those that are negotiating with other planets, there are those that are negotiating with quote-unquote new recruits, there are those who are the contact specialists, the telepathic coordinators in that way, there are even those that will go discreetly upon your planet to conduct certain forms of tasks that need to be completed as well. Much of this in that sense does have to do with energetic balancing. Some of it can also relate to the idea of invoking certain situations and events to take place upon your world also. So this is again just somewhat of an overview as it pertains to the function of a super federation. Again, it is very much open source, but there is also a jurisdiction behind it all. We thank you. There's a lot more emotional and intuitive heightening through many more people. What is this leading us into? We thank you once again for your question. Well, primarily we would say that 2017 has been a very, very intense year for many of you. That again, this was referred to as the year of connection. It was the year that many of you spoke to your shadow selves. It is the idea to where that which has been buried for quite some time has therefore become revealed. And that through that year of 2017, many of you were able to understand yourselves greater than any other year previous. Simply because everything that has been put upon your back burner is now starting to become revealed. Simply because the energies upon the planet are becoming much more ripe. You are bringing in a very large cosmic integration taking place here through the aspect of your sun's solar activity, through the idea about the cycles to where your own hologram representing the earth affairs are now starting to move themselves up into an uprising. Basically looking into the idea of where you are as a people, pertaining to your own intelligence, pertaining to your own motives, pertaining to your own purposes and ideals. All of this together intermingles in that way. Much of the phases of the moon, much of the geomagnetic fronts taking place upon your planet, and again, other surrounding bodies, everything is coordinating together to basically represent the end of a cusp of a cycle. And that this end of a cusp of a cycle that is therefore being shared astrologically is now bringing yourselves into a heightening state of emotion. As your emotions begin to purge, as you make peace with those states of emotional and traumatic situations, your intuition starts to heighten exponentially. And so the way about how you are starting to feel much more intuitive, that many of you may have vivid, lucid dreams as it pertains to prophetic situations taking place, yes, this is on the rise, simply because your world is unfolding herself. She is inverting herself and allowing these grids to come online. Basically, you could refer to as your own grid system upon your planet is now being energetically charged. And as it's being energetically charged for much of the work that you have done, for much of the work that's happening behind the scenes, for much of the celestial work that is taking place here, this charging of energy is basically creating a high magnetic form of result. And this magnetic form of result is now starting to pull out much of the dense energies that have been existing upon your planet for a great deal of time. And whatever the planet itself faces, you yourselves will face as well too. It's all part and parcel of her shifting herself up into another dimension. And for many of you who are also aligning together with this energy, will be going with her. And those that are basically stranded with the emotional situations, as we have discussed before, will remain behind within the third density paradigm. So basically where this is taking you is to another dimension. You are lightening the load. You are bringing yourselves into a greater shedding of old dense skin that is now being removed, that is now being peeled off. And you are now moving yourself into a greater transformational state where the aspect of emotions are now showing themselves like an erupting volcano of lava, and now you're being able to face them. It's no longer attempting to run from them. It's no longer attempting to hide from them. It's about facing them mano a mano, we will say. That's primarily what's happening. And so the emotional situations will still continue. There will still be, again, grander states of intuition that you will now start to feel because you are now grasping the concept of utilizing your inner senses. And that's what intuition is all about. It's grabbing a hold of all of these internal energies and being able to perceive them through the inner senses, which means your inner senses are coming more and more online. You're able to close your eyes, you're able to take a deep breath, you're able to calm yourself, and now you're able to feel a whole nother world around you from within. Well, that's what's taking place because everything is being charged. The aspect of the chaos happening upon your planet is all significant to the degree of change that you're all facing. And that is why you are noticing these intense emotional states, these intense intuitive states that are bringing you up into this transformational cycle for those who are doing their inner work, for those who are making peace with themselves and with others, will travel in kind together with the earth from one dimension to another. That's where you're headed. That's what you're in for. Thank you everybody for tuning in to New Earth Teachings YouTube channel. Please feel free to visit our website, newearthteachings.com. Private sessions, digital courses, blog, free media, and a lot more. Again, newearthteachings.com. Thank you so much, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the next video. Take care.